Marie and I founded Artists in Context in 2009, actually in Boston, to instigate, support, and highlight contemporary art practices that were sort of crossing boundaries, crossing disciplines, fields, sectors, in order to invent new platforms, new representations, new systems that could actually offer alternative ways of looking at and acting upon the critical issues of our time. So the projects that we support don't actually originate in the studio. They live at the intersection of art and other fields, like the environment, science, health, urban planning, education, etc. And we work not only in Greater Boston, but also in the Pioneer Valley of Massachusetts, in the state of Rhode Island, and in the state of Maine. What we try to do is create an opportunity for people from different walks of life, artists and other creative thinkers, to come together and sort of exchange and cross-fertilize points of view about these critical issues. And so we have created a sort of forum for critical, cross-disciplinary inquiry that sits outside of the academic institutions in Boston and in Providence, while at the same time sort of mines the intellectual and creative capital that's housed inside those academic institutions. So one of our main goals is actually to create more of a porous and collaborative boundary between the art community, the academic community, and really the activist community. The events that we have already supported with Jory Ketton and Micah Salkind and Mari's help, our coordinators here, have included Make It Better, where we hosted a reception. It was a health and design forum at RISD last year. We've also supported the Urban Pond Procession, a research discussion Who Made Us Creative, which was a fishbowl at New Urban Arts, and a one-book book club at Libertaria, a Women in Science and Animation Salon, and an opening event with Ellen around the piece that we're going to talk about this morning called Distant Mirrors. So very briefly, one of the goals of this convening is to really further the content and the projects that are being presented today to help define the next iteration of these long-term projects by connecting people, ideas, institutions. And what we hope to do today is engender a rich dialogue around each of these exemplary projects and sort of help people understand the skills, the attitudes, and the implications for creatives who actually want to work in this way. So I want to thank especially the City of Providence Department of Art, Culture, and Tourism for their support. And turn it over to Ellen and Marcel.
Thank you, Lisa. Thanks everybody for coming, and thanks to Artists in Context for stirring things up in their way that they do. We've been extremely grateful for their support and for the work that they're doing in Providence. The project that I'm going to show you, Distant Mirrors, has kind of two ends of a spectrum, I think, that animate the work. And one end of the spectrum is this historical map. The center shape there is the 52 plots of land that Roger Williams apportioned to the people that believed with him that church and state should remain separate. And the land was given to him under friendly terms by the Narragansett Aboriginal Native people after he had been kicked out of Massachusetts for his strong ideas. And one of the striking things about this is just, I think of it as almost like a weird slices of bread. he was determined that nobody would get a better water view, a more fertile place, et cetera, et cetera. So it's resolutely evenly distributed, which is why it has such a strange kind of linear configuration. And as my friend Jen Smith and John McNiff, the park rangers at the Roger Williams National Historic Site, have pointed out to me, there were a number of women, single women, who had plots of land as well, which was quite advanced for the time. So this is one end of the spectrum that informs the work, and this is actually the other end of the spectrum. This is a photograph that came out of the front page of the New York Times in 2006. It's by a photographer named Akintunde Akinle, and it's a photograph of a rogue fire in Nigeria, along the Nigerian pipeline, that was caused by a thing that they do there called bunkering. They just poke a hole in the pipeline and tap the oil for their own purposes, because there's been a long-standing resistance movement to the big oil companies in the Niger Delta. And it was, I have to say that this photograph was a catalyst for my deep dive into plastic as a material. And I have lived with it on my studio door ever since. It struck me as, you know, as strange and beautiful as a Hieronymus Bosch painting, and also very haunting, because I began to understand and explore how might I be connected to that chain of events. I mean, I buy Shell oil at the gas station to fill up my little car, et cetera, et cetera. So in what ways am I linked to an image like this? And this is just another photograph from the same period of time in my sort of beginning of this body of work. This is a photograph from Kazakhstan, and it's a photograph of things, peak oil sites that have tipped, so disused. There's a whole tipping point with the use of oil, where oil fields actually lose the stuff, and then all the machinery is left behind. So Distant Mirrors really kind of is a connect the dots piece between a historical utopian moment that's actually deeply local, and then sort of a very sort of fast forward dialing out to the present moment, in which we're in an interconnected global economy where our local lives and actions have repercussions that we just don't even see. We can't even imagine what they are. So cut to the present. In making this work, I've been scoring my bottles in two ways for the last 4 years. I've been getting up very early and delicately extracting them from people's recycling bins on the street, and in my very New Englandy way, kind of, you know, washing them carefully and hoping that none of my neighbors will talk to me as I do this, and also scoring big at the New York City Marathon, where probably 20,000 bottles are thrown aside in 4 hours. So I usually get a couple thousand in an hour and a half there. Well, I missed it last year, or, you know, I only got 800 or 900 bottles. It wasn't a big score. So I decided to go to the Boston Marathon, and they've wised up, and they're using huge containers. So I wasn't able to score that day. And that day, I drove straight to the Rhode Island Resource Recovery Center. I walked in cold. I introduced myself to Marcel, and I said, I'm an artist, and I'm pretty interested in seeing whether we could create some kind of a deal, I guess, around my obtaining some of this HDPE plastic that I use. And he was nonplussed, generous and cordial as ever, always the gentleman, and he took me out to the back where all the operations were taking place. And the next thing I knew, he had managed to carve out a 200-pound bale for me. And this is what the bale looked like when we dropped it off at my sculpture foundry, which is a little bit away from here. 200 pounds is 1/6 of a bale for these guys. This is what they bring in. This is less than a day, right, Marcel?
Yes.
Less than a day in the state of Rhode Island. And if I hope I don't get my math wrong, but 4.7 tons a day comes in the state of Rhode Island, and that's with only 25% of the people participating in recycling, which reflects the national statistic of participation. So 20 runs a day, roughly? Yeah?
What's that?
20 runs a day, 20 loads approximately of that HDPE mixed plastic stuff?
That comes in?
Yes.
Well, we end up, as far as shipments go, it's, we ship out one load of the 2 different types a week.
Mm-hmm.
So it's,
One truckload.
right.
Yeah. So the other amazing thing, and I don't have good photographs of this, is that when we do our, sorting, curbside sorting and so forth, there's a disconnect there. You're doing the good thing and off it goes. It was amazing and startling to understand that all of that is being sorted by human hands. So on very fast-moving conveyor belts. So the attention span for that sorting process is completely mind-boggling. And this is actually the paper conveyor belt, but just the entire process was an astonishing open door for me to see. There are the bales, the colored plastic on the right, aluminum in the middle, and the plastic HDPE on the left. There's one of my 4 assistants, Diane Hebert, kind of giving us a scale shot of the bales. And so what my piece is made out of is 1/6 of one bale, just to give you a sense of the scale. So 4 of us, Megan McLaughlin, Rose Height, Diane Hebert, and, Panapa Prakamakul joined us later. We just rolled up our sleeves, we created baths of bio-cleaner, and just dove in. It took us 5 days with 4 people working 40 hours a week to clean the bale. So it was 2 baths of bio-cleaner and then power washing. And we cut them open. Each bottle was cut open so that we could get inside and clean it. Now that I know how dirty the Providence River is, some people have said, why did you bother? But the truth of it is that it was very important to us to start to recuperate this, because we were interested, and I'm still very interested, in the labor of recuperation and the act of it. It's definitely part of the work. And we had a little contest, how many bottles could we do a day? It was about 320 average that we could clean in a day with 4 people working 8 hours. So it was pretty intense. And then we took it to the studio and started making the lines of the map. The bottles were already crushed, so we worked with them in their flattened state, and because we knew it was going to be in the water, the entire piece is made with what's called cold connection. It's essentially sewn with electrical cable ties. Megan McLaughlin is a graduate student in landscape architecture here, so she created a scale drawing of the map on the floor, and then we began an articulated drawing of it. It's stuffed with styrofoam that the steel yard didn't know what to do with. So it's stuffed with recycled styrofoam. And we actually found a place to recycle the styrofoam. So in 8 days, we're taking it out of the water, and every part of the piece is going to an appropriate waste stream. So we also found another place to recycle styrofoam that's using it to lighten the soil and green roofs. So that place is in upstate New York. This is Brook Street, which is now a road in Providence, running through the center of the map. And you can tell the scale of this. It went wall to wall in this 2,500-foot studio. Of course, now in the river it looks like a little mosquito, but So the little blocks were essentially meant to indicate sort of a kind of a visual way that your eye moves through, but they're also stuffed with styrofoam, so they're really keeping it floating. And the first version of the piece was populated with the original stone ender architecture that those settlers used, and also some Narragansett longhouses. I think there's an image in there of the longhouse. Oops, sorry. We also included some flags. At first we had some letters from some of Roger Williams' language translations, and then John McNiff said, "That's total hogwash. That language was an oral language, and that alphabet stuff is all wrong." So we threw that out and we wove the flags as a way of saying two cultures met each other. And they're woven from plastic bags. So we did a little float test. To our shock and amazement, it floated. And, and we just plunged forward with our fingers crossed. This is Megan McLaughlin with the beginning of the addition of the 5 oil fields that are the top countries that source crude oil to the U.S. That's the Niger Delta. So the Canadian tar sands of Alberta, Mexico, Venezuela, Saudi Arabia, and the Niger Delta surround the mirror images of the Americas in the water. And every time I make a piece, I try to recycle something forward. It's like a yogurt culture. And so the antique-looking one in the middle was actually floating in Allendale Farm Pond up in Boston for 2 months last fall in the first floating piece that I made, which was called Still Life. There's the oil refinery being made. So our idea was always that we would start it with the historical image, the stone ender houses and the Narragansett longhouses, and then at a certain point we would just switch it out for the oil refinery, the 21st century landscape, and it took a while to come up with the image of the economic seesaw, I call it, which is that thing in the middle of the piece with a McMansion at one end and then the typical triple-deckers that you see all over New England on the other end. And up until very recently, the central structure was part of the highway that they were taking down at the Fox Point Bridge. So even up until July, you could see that as part of the view. It's not there anymore, but we use that as the fulcrum. There's the little triple-deckers and the, quote, McMansion. And there it is, sort of filling the studio wall to wall. You can see the big 12-foot door there. So one of the amazing things about this studio was that we slid the door open and actually took the mothership out the door with 16 volunteers and just put it in the water across the street. That's me talking on my cell phone just minutes after we put it in the water. I have chest waders on. Anyway, it quickly became clear that my chest waders and everybody else's were going to fill with water, so we were offered some canoes from the Woonasquatucket Water Rivershed Organization, and we took it down to the site with canoes. With Megan McLaughlin, see her butt there? She's actually pushing it. So we took it down, it took about an hour, and there it is on opening night before the ducks started pooping on it, which is what they're doing now. And also opening night, that's the mirror image of the North American landmass with the Tower of Babel under scaffolding. And that's Venezuela, Saudi Arabia, and Mexico surrounding that one. There's the Tower of Babel after about 10 days with quite a lot of organic debris. And it lost one of its anchors, so it started floating under the bridge. There was a huge amount of debris that these two were catching in the 2 weeks that they were in this site. And everybody thought that was incredibly cool except for me. I was a bifurcated human. I thought conceptually it's completely tight. And as the artistic mother of these fragile children, I'm desperately disturbed by it. But in any case, it's been moved out to another location and different things are happening with it now. Here it is at night. Our theory about why all the solar lights don't go on at all the same times in that location was that the shadow of the bridge might have been actually cutting down the sunlight. There it is on a calm day without a lot of trash in it. And here's the new location with the seesaw put in, and just a collage image of the new location where those mirror Americas with the oil fields are closer to the mothership. That's just a close-up of the oil refinery. And here it is, the light fading, lights on at night. Another nighttime image. And this is, again, a collaged picture of it in its new location. I just wanted to close by saying there is a dedicated website, which Artists in Context helped us to do, www.distantmirrors.net. And Panapaprakamakul, and it's such a bummer because we had her in there, and this didn't make it into this presentation, but she's the guiding spirit of this data line. We did a telescopic lens from the studio to the world, having to do with the bales, the number of bottles that come in. She broke it down to one person, 32 days to clean 1,500 bottles, the amount of water that we use to clean, and then the average amount of water used by Americans in one day, et cetera. It dials out to the state of Rhode Island, the number of, we said 20 dump truck deliveries, and that's from dwellings of 3 families and under, so again, not a big apartment buildings, commercial businesses. And then we took it out to the nation, and again, just an analysis of water and trucks. We were trying to sort of stay with the thought, if you see what I mean. And then we took it to the developing world. So twice a day, one woman walks on foot in the developing world to a water source 1 hour away. She transports 5 gallons of water, each trip weighing 41.5 pounds. She transports an average of 10 gallons of water in a day, which is less than a family needs, by the way. These were taken from a beautiful book called The Big Thirst. So if you turn the American into the same person, that American makes 10 trips on foot to get the water that they use every day, which is 25 miles in total. How many people do you know who walk that far in a day? Anyway, so that's it. Check out the website, and thank you so much.